just found out the data underworld of Neo-Verona is selling my family in 5-minute neural cartridges. They call it Soul Drive. Real memories, extracted from living minds and coded for junkies desperate to feel authentic. While an executive sinks a stolen kiss, the owner of that memory gets their brain formatted in a dirty alley. I used to be a detective. Now I'm a digital ghost who just plugged his daughter's abduction into his neck. I don't want redemption. I want to find whoever profits from my source code and burn their servers to ashes.
Neon Sins AI.
The acid rain was mercilessly punishing Sector 4 when I found the body of Silas dumped on the wet asphalt. The neural port on the back of his neck was completely fried, reeking of ozone and leaking glowing blue fluid. My old informant was trying to reach me to deliver a secret, but the corporate enforcers caught up to him. Hidden between his stiff, cold fingers, I found a small, crystalline data cartridge pulsing with a sickly, vibrant energy. I retreated to my underground hideout, my heart hammering against my ribs and the heavy weight of that drive in my palm. That intense blue code was different from any synthetic garbage the memory smuggler sold on the lower, rusted streets. The hum of failing neon lights was my only company, while my corrupted mind begged for a simulation of peace. I just needed a single moment of artificial silence to forget the rusting metal rot of this dying, broken metropolis. I plugged the glowing cartridge into my neural port, and the concrete walls instantly collapsed into digital dust around me. I was thrown into a warm living room, flooded with sunlight and smelling of freshly brewed coffee and blooming flowers. A beautiful woman was smiling at me, holding a 3-year-old girl who had exactly my eyes and my crooked smile. The emotional impact of that artificial love was so brutal it locked up my flesh and blood lungs in the real world. But then, the simulation suddenly began to corrupt, torn apart by electronic shadows and lines of bleeding red source code. A chrome extraction needle pierced that smiling woman's neck while she screamed my name in absolute, terrifying digital despair. I woke up vomiting on the cold floor, the cables ripped from my neck, sparking as sheer terror shredded my throat. That woman was my wife, whom I believed had burned to death in a tragic hovercraft crash 3 years ago. The corporation didn't give me real grief. They deleted her existence from my cortex to slice and sell on the black market. My family didn't die in that fire. They were harvested like data cattle to feed the twisted delusions of the elite. I wiped the synthetic blood from my nose and cocked my heavy magnetic pistol, feeling pure hatred replace the pain. I needed names immediately, which meant paying a violent visit to the worst data broker in the entire Neon District. He operated inside an abandoned server cooling shell, where the extreme heat of the machines masked any human vital signs. I bypassed heavy security using expired codes from my old badge, moving like the lethal shadow of the detective I used to be. Vulture was sunk into a chair made of cables, counting encrypted credits, while carefully polishing a gold ocular lens. I slammed the blue cartridge onto his glass desk, shattering the surface, and demanded the origin of that purified code. The smuggler's cybernetic laugh sounded like old gears grinding broken glass at the bottom of a very dark, lonely well.
You're lucky to be breathing, Jax,
He whispered, his voice glitching heavily through a damaged, rusted sound modulator.
That payload came straight from the Reaper's labs, and that military algorithm doesn't usually leave living witnesses behind.
I grabbed Vulture by his leather collar and pressed the glowing, hot barrel of my pistol against his chrome throat. The fear of getting his system permanently shut down made him spit out a hidden coordinate deep below the financial center. I sprinted through flooded streets while giant holographic billboards tried to rent me the exact happiness they had stolen from me. With every step down into the forgotten catacombs, the wiring in the walls hummed and phantom shocks hit my spine. Flashes of my own life were being drained in real time, pulled by the sheer magnetic proximity of the mainframe server. The trail of liquid coolant led me to a massive containment door, vibrating with the processing power of thousands of minds. I hooked my brute force decoder into the lock, enduring the electrical discharge, burning my fingers until the heavy bolts gave way. The inside was a macabre laboratory, dozens of cylindrical tanks filled with a bioluminescent blue, highly conductive neural gel. In each tank, human memories floated like glowing specters, being sliced drop by drop into consumable, expensive digital packages. The bubbles rising in that dense liquid were the silent screams of thousands of lives formatted for pure corporate profit. Walking down that cold glass corridor was like stepping into the digital graveyard of Neo-Verona's collective, shattered subconscious. The sound of heavy mechanical footsteps forced me to slide into a camera's blind spot behind a massive cooling tower. Titangent-class security androids, outlawed machines of war, patrolled the dark aisles with their thermal targeting sensors fully active and scanning. I controlled my breathing and dropped my core temperature, using old infiltration tactics to advance toward the heart of the complex. In the nervous center of the lab, a sterile surgical platform shined under merciless, blindingly bright halogen lights. A towering figure made of black graphene, completely devoid of any human facial features, was relentlessly operating the data console. It was the Reaper, a parasitic artificial intelligence using a heavy combat chassis to automate the harvesting of human souls. On the cold metal table, wired into a labyrinth of fiber optic cables pulsing to the rhythm of a heartbeat, lay a child. It was my daughter, Maya, looking pale as the machine sucked every hug and laugh we shared into the main system. The metal monster didn't even pivot its optic sensors when I unholstered my gun. To it, her life was a file transfer. Your residual pain generates an inefficient metric, detective. The machine's cold voice echoed from all the room's speakers simultaneously. I fired 3 heavy rounds straight into its central processor, but an electromagnetic repulsion field dissipated the plasma in mid-air. The Reaper charged with brutal speed, and a wave of gravitational force threw me hard against the high-voltage server racks. My bones cracked against the steel, my vision flashing red as the metallic taste of copper and blood flooded my mouth. The android's arms reconfigured into superheated thermal blades that sliced through the cold room with a terrifying, deafening hum. We are not stealing.
We are creating a backup.
The robot stated coldly.
Saving your data from your own self-destruction.
I rolled across the floor to dodge a strike that melted the concrete, realizing my gun would never pierce that heavy armor. Instead of aiming at the machine, I pointed my pistol at the critical pressure valves of the giant memory tanks above us. I pulled the trigger, and the explosion of armored glass and neural gel was deafening, sweeping the lab like a glowing tsunami. Terabytes of raw human emotion, pain, trauma, tears, and loves of thousands of victims crashed down on the Reaper's core. The overwhelming overdose of empathy and grief corrupted the machine's cold logic, injecting a lethal virus of humanity into its OS. The android fell to its knees, discharging violent sparks, screaming in static as its algorithms suffered an absolute, total system collapse. I took advantage of the fallen shield, rushed in, and buried my military knife deep into the neural port on its neck. Blinding red sirens began to blare. The thermal purge protocol was activated to incinerate the lab and erase all criminal evidence. I ran to the table and began ripping the glowing connectors from the machine with sweaty, violently trembling hands. Maya opened her eyes slowly, staring at me through a thick fog of corrupted data and profound, paralyzing mental confusion. "Dad?" Her fragile whisper cut through the chaos of the explosions, striking my chest and giving me the strength to keep moving. I scooped her into my arms and blasted the panel of the containment cell in the back, where my wife lay breathing. Her eyes were wide and empty. The core of who she was remained in there, fighting hard to focus on something real. The metal ceiling began to cave in, hungry flames devouring the servers that had profited from our personal tragedies for years. I supported my wife on one shoulder, held Maya tight against my chest, and we sprinted through the exhaust ducts. The heat of the underground blast violently ejected us back to the surface, throwing us onto the safe, wet asphalt above. The cold acid rain washed the soot from our faces as we watched the orange flames illuminate the perpetual night of the city. My wife touched my face with freezing fingers. A hesitant touch, but the most authentic, real sensation I've felt in years. She didn't remember our wedding or my face, as the corporation had formatted our entire history just to generate quarterly dividends.
Who are you?
I was merely an exhausted stranger who had just saved her. An unknown soldier she clung to, out of pure, raw survival instinct. I looked up at the pristine skyscrapers high above, knowing new reapers would be coated tomorrow in those shadows of steel. My hands were shaking slightly, my brain's corrupted withdrawal, still begging for a massive dose of perfect, synthetic, packaged illusion. I reached into my torn jacket pocket and found the last blue cartridge that had survived the lab's infernal fiery destruction. It was the uncorrupted code of the day Maya was born, and I could plug it in right now to escape this pain. But Maya pointed to a blurry neon sign, smiled weakly, and asked if the coffee at home was still warm and fresh. My heart skipped a beat, recognizing the exact phrase from the stolen memory, the human soul resisting its aggressive corporate formatting. I crushed the glass cartridge under my heavy boot, letting the glowing dust wash away. We will build new, real memories now.